Hello, young or old here, welcome to my channel. Well, hopefully we might have seen the last of the storms, let's hope so. But, you know, spring is approaching and we should be getting some better weather. And I, for one, am starting to plan a couple of bike tours now. You know, I'd like to get as many as I can during the year. So, this video is about touring. Now, if it turns out to be a longish one, I might break it down into couple of different videos. We'll see how it goes, but watch the intro and stay tuned. The first thing to do before doing on any sort of bike tour is prepare the bike. You know, check if it needs a service. If it does, get it done. Check your tyre condition. It's no good sort of planning a tour and you're doing, you know, 1,000 to 2,000 miles and you've only got 500 miles left of tread on your tyre. So, you know, make sure your tyres are good. When you sort of go over the bike, just check, see if there's any loose nuts and bolts. If anything's rattling, then tighten it. If it's a chain drive, you know, check your tension of your chain. Make sure there's enough life in that too. And of course, check all your fluids. Oil, brake fluid. Once you're sure your bike is all as it should be, then you're good to go. At least you know you've got the peace of mind that, you know, your bike is going to be up to the job. When you're touring, you know, you're going to need to be able to carry clothes. Absolute minimum clothes. If you're camping as well as you're touring, then you need to be able to carry all your camping gear. You know, the only thing I can say is whether you use hard or soft luggage, you know, travel as light as you can. There's no point dragging around an extra half a dozen shoes or that. You're not going to need them. So keep it as light as you possibly can. So there's two main types of sort of panniers. You get your hard panniers and you get your soft ones. Now the soft ones are okay, but you must make sure that the weight is equal. So don't have one really heavy and one really light. And then once they're actually fixed to the bike, you then got to secure them down with all sorts of ties down. You know, at the end of the day, you don't want them moving around while you're riding. Worse still, or falling off. Make sure they're level when you position them. The downside of those is, I think, they tend not to be as waterproof. And if you stop off somewhere and you want to, I don't know, in a town and you want to go and have a walk around, grab a bit of lunch, you know, there's always a chance that they could be stolen and removed off the bike. Hard luggage is my preferred choice. Yes, it's more expensive, but once you've bought it, you know, last years. You know, the downside to that is you've got to have a rack fitted on the bike. Some of them now, they've got quick release racks, so they're quite easy to install. I personally just leave mine on. I still load them, you know, so that the weight is evenly distributed, but you just clip them into place and they lock on. So wherever you go, you know they're secure. You know, you're going to need an angle grinder or a crowbar to get them off. And nothing's 100% security safe nowadays, but in my opinion, they're better. I think the added bonuses is that I've never had one leak. You know, they seem to be pretty waterproof. You can get a top box as well. I tend to not use the top box. It can be a little bit awkward for the wife getting off and on with the top box. So we just have the two side cases. Tank bags are pretty good. I tend to put one, say, on the tank, it clips on there, and I put sort of things like shoes in there, anything which is probably a little bit heavier. The actual top part of it is see-through, so I tend to put a map in there should I need it, and any documents which I might need to hand, I tend to keep in there, and it's great. Also inside there, I tend to keep a can of chain lube and disc locks and various things like that. A few years ago, when I used to go to a lot of rallies, if I didn't have a pillion, I'd put my side cases on, but then I used to sort of strap the tent going across the back seat and then actually it used to rest on the seat and the hard cases, I should say, and then tie them onto there, and that was great. I used to put my sleeping bag across there as well, but obviously with a sleeping bag I used to use one of these dry sacks, which are really good. They use them for kayaking and things like that. There's actually no point at all having a wet, soggy sleeping bag to climb into at night time. What's the best clothing to use when you're touring? Well, this is down to personal choice. The one thing I will never tend to wear if I'm going touring is leather jacket or leather trousers. Yeah, they're good protection, but at the end of the day, if it gets wet, they stay wet for a long time. You're only going away for 2 or 3 days and you get a soaking on your first day, you're going to come back in wet clothes. You know, they're just a nightmare to try and get dry. So I prefer to use a textile jacket. You know, make sure it's a waterproof one, and if you've had it a while, you know, retreat it just to make sure it's waterproof. When it comes to trousers, here again, I'll either use textile trousers if I know we're going to get a little bit of rain, or I might take some Kevlar denim jeans. If I'm taking the jeans though, I will always make sure I've got these cheap lightweight pair of waterproof over trousers, which I can just shove in the tank bag or in the seat, or you know, so if it does rain at least I can keep myself dry. When it comes to boots, you know, in my case I only tend to wear waterproof boots just to be safe, make sure my feet are nice and dry. If you've had them a while, again, make sure they're treated. You can use one of these proper leather food treatments, or just give them a good old polish, you know, good old wax polish, buff them up, and that will help to keep them nice, waterproof, and keep your feet dry. When it comes to gloves, you know, I tend to take 3 pair. You know, there's nothing worse, in my opinion, than getting up in the morning and putting a wet pair of gloves on from the night before. So at least that's the case. Gives me time to get 1 pair dried out a little bit, and I've got a nice dry pair to put on in their place. Earplugs, you know, a lot of people forget to protect their ears, but on a long journey it's not so much the engine noise or anything like that, but it's the wind noise, and you're getting hours and hours of wind noise blowing through your helmet into your ears. You know, it could cause you ear damage later on in life, so I always tend to just put a pair of earplugs in. I'll probably wear something around my neck, like a snood or a buff or something like that. It helps to keep the draft out and just gives you a little bit more warmth, a little bit more protection. Essential item, well, I think they're essential items, the things I always take with me. And one is like plastic bags. Now I don't just mean a carrier bag, it's the tiny thicker plastic bag, and there's usually like a rubber grip seal or like a type of zip fastener in it. I find these absolutely ideal. I tend to put my wallet in there. You know, my wallet's leather, and here again it can get soaking wet through. Now a lot of the notes nowadays are sort of plasticky material, but you know, I can remember, you know, days gone by, I've been in a hotel room and my wallet's been absolutely soaking, and there I am trying to separate all my notes without ripping them, and then drying them around the hotel room on the top of radiators or in the windowsill. You know, if I hadn't done that, I'm just going to end up with an expensive ball of paper mache. So these bags are absolutely ideal. I also tend to keep my phone in one. It helps to keep it dry. You know, should you have a problem on your tour and you need to contact someone, that phone is your lifeline, and if it's absolutely wet through and water's dripping out of it, it's not going to work. Another essential thing I like to take with me is just a small first aid kit. You know, I'm not going to be performing no roadside, you know, emergency operations, but just the basics which can help you out. Also important, I take some painkillers. If you've ever tried, you know, riding with a banging headache or a raging toothache, you can't concentrate on the road. It's not safe. So just to be safe, just make sure you take some painkillers. They take up very little room. Just chuck them in the first aid kit and put them on the bike somewhere. when you're riding on your tour, take regular breaks. You know, you'll know how long you like to ride before stopping. I used to ride probably more miles when I was a little bit younger, but you know, now I like to stop after an hour or so just to get off the bike, have a little walk round, stretch my legs, have a cigarette. You know, I may even have a hot or a cold drink if I need one. But it just helps to get off the bike. Just keeps that circulation going a little bit. If you're using soft luggage, I'd always say it's always good to get off and check, make sure your straps are all nice and tight and not coming loose. If it's hot weather, you know, it's important not to become dehydrated, so it's vital to replenish fluids. If I had to stop just in a lay-by somewhere, I'd always carry a bottle of water or something in my tank bag, just so at least I can have a swallow of, you know, something to drink. But even when the weather's not hot, you can still become dehydrated. So, you know, be aware and just take regular breaks. It's always wise to have some form of recovery. You just never know, you know, should you have any problems. I remember years ago when I was covering, I went on a tour from like across from Wales, Southern Ireland, Northern Ireland, and across to Scotland. And as I was coming off the ferry in Scotland, I had something drop, and actually my brake pads just fell out of the bike. You know, I thought, what the hell's going on here? One of them must have fell off beforehand, and I hadn't realised. So, you know, luckily I managed to just limp back to the B&B in Scotland where we were staying. I phoned up recovery. They took my bike to a mechanic, and luckily it was all done. At least that way I could just next day carry on with the journey as planned without any disruption whatsoever. So, you know, if you haven't got recovery with your insurance premium, make sure you've got something just to be on the safe side. I always like to take this, I don't know what you actually call it, it's like a steel wire, but it's coiled like a spring. It's got a loop on each end, so you know, it just compresses itself, and then you just stretch it out when you need it. But I find that comes in really handy, because you turn up somewhere and it's a hot day, and you think you don't want to keep your coat on, but then again it's an absolute nightmare carrying the things around with you. So what I tend to do is I undo this springy steely thing, and I shove it through the sleeves of mine and my wife's jackets, and then I thread it through where, you know, the visor part of the full face helmet. I actually lock it to the rack of the bike and put a lock on it, and that's it. I just leave all the kit on the bike. It's all chained onto the bike. Absolutely works great. In fact, you know, I've been out with many group rides, and sometimes I could do with a longer piece of steel cable, because everyone thinks, oh yeah, chuck ours on, and you end up where you can't see my bike. It's just covered in, you know, jackets. But again, it's a very handy thing to have. Well, I'm going to end this video here and call this part 1, but I will do a part 2 one very shortly, basically covering going on a tour camping and going on a tour using hotels and B&B. So stay tuned for part 2. The main reason for this video was to hopefully encourage people to get the bikes out and go on a tour. If you've never done it, you know, you're missing a whole lot of fun, and it's just great. So if you like it, please tick. Subscribe is always nice. It gives us encouragement, motivation, shall we say, to continue with the channel. Leave any comments below and I'll always reply. And by the way, stay tuned for part 2. So all what's left me to say is ride safe and bye for now.